I can start. Okay, great. So happy that you're here. And well, I have a packed 20-minute slot where I was supposed to talk about bad bots and how I try to solve it with digital twin thinking. And as almost everybody else here in the audience, I added somehow a plus to somehow justify why I will introduce a little bit of those generative AI and large language model thing in my talk, but I promise it somehow makes sense, and I also promise that I have some kind of real-world experience, so I really do that. So hopefully I can add some kind of value to this talk, talking about these things. Anyways, the motivation of that talk a couple of months ago was that I really thought about quitting my job because I was somehow, well, how can you say that, sad about how it works, what we are doing. And the issue with what we are doing is, and you heard a lot of talks where the people mentioned that there are way too many bad bots in the world. And I personally think this is, well, it has a lot to do with the mindset you have. You have to change your mental model of thinking about conversations, how you might solve problems. And the first thing I always experience, not always, but in most cases, that people, they tend to ask, so what to do and how to do that. So I have a lot of requests by people asking me, well, we want to have a bot, whatever kind, speech bot, voice bot, whatever you know here in the audience. And then I ask, why? And this is really weird, and then they can't really answer that. They say, because we want to have a bot with that and this technology, and because we heard that, let's say, artificial intelligence might solve every issue we have, that is a little bit more the how, the what and the how, but they rarely can answer the why. And my general question in this case is always, so is there anything this bot might improve over what you have? Would you like to use the bot yourself? And people rarely can answer that. And this was the reason why I thought about quitting my job, but thankfully I continued, and now I have a lot of fun doing that through all the involvement and evolvement in the market. But anyway, I like to discuss the three major issues I discovered talking with clients and partners and also colleagues. And first of all, they think we just combine data and AI and everything will be good, but the major issue is the data is in most cases really, really bad in terms of conversations. It's not prepared for conversations, and it's really easy to solve. And I think the majority here in the audience, they know how to solve it, so I won't go into detail here. You need proper conversation design. That's literally the challenge, yes, and you have to deal with this topic. But unfortunately, yes, there are a bunch of courses out there, and I also did a lot of courses, and you can gain so many certificates, but the issue is it has to do with your mindset. Just knowing the concepts does not mean that you really apply those concepts. And in my experience, you can turn almost everybody into a conversation designer if you spend enough time guiding those people to simply think in a different way, getting rid of the mental models, how you might think a conversation works. So it simply costs time, and you need to spend time with doing that, and you need some kind of guidance, consultancies, and then most people can turn into a conversation designer, let's say in 3 months or so. It does not take that much time. But anyways, there are also some simple rules you have to apply. I can show you my favorite one, so that you have at least, or the people here, because it's a strange room, that you also have at least one takeaway. What we do in our project is simply to simplify the content to make it short and feasible for conversations, and then we enrich the content with something we call nudging. So because we expect our bot to be not perfect, so we introduce some sentences how you can repair the conversation by yourself. Yes, it's not totally natural, but it helps to repair the conversation and to get to your aim, that you find a proper solution for your request, because we expect people to be cooperative. This is one of the foundations of conversation design, because if they are not cooperative, if they are not willing to really succeed, then what can you do about that? Yes, if they just want to blame you because they are unhappy, it's like talking to humans in a call center. And the last thing or the two last things is we make it conversational. So we have to teach especially our developers, technicians, that there must be some kind of action item, some kind of question that it feels like a conversation. It's different than just pointing out the answer and there's nothing else behind that, so you don't have the feeling of a conversation. And last thing, because it's a technology and usually we have kind of a screen or whatever, we can do it in a multimodal way, we add some conversational components. So why not use what you have? If you have a screen, then use quick reply buttons, chips, however you name it. And this is simply what we try to follow for basic bots, for FAQ bots and things like that. And this helps a lot, but you have to learn to write the content, the text in a proper way, and this simply takes time. Even if you did a course, it is not it's not learned and applied in a couple of days. The next issue we have is that there's a totally wrong expectation on how AI might work, but it's simply math. It's probability. That's everything which works here. It's no magic, but it's hardly to explain. Anyway, one more issue we have with AI is that people think it solves everything, and thanks to generative AI, I have so many awkward requests. It's a little bit like having a sledgehammer and trying to put an image on the wall. It's a little bit like that. They think applying generative AI to their solution, this will solve everything. And unfortunately, it's not the case. And you have to select in a creative way a proper way of detecting what users want to do. Yes, and that could be kind of a heuristics. It could be kind of a more complex algorithm. It could be just simply rules. It could be based on machine learning or a generative AI. It depends. And I was involved in a bunch of projects where we only did use rules to detect keywords, a little bit like ELIZA in the 60s. And this really did succeed because it's very robust. And if the scope is very narrow, people know what they can expect from your bot, then simply using rules might be more efficient than applying machine learning, than applying artificial intelligence. But indeed, if you have hundreds of rules, if you want to take into account different synonyms, if you want to take into account different flexions, then it's getting more and more complicated, and then you can't maintain rules anymore. And then you turn around the paradigm, and usually it's way more efficient than to use machine learning-based concept, natural language understanding, for instance. And the funny thing about natural language understanding is that we then, this way, introduce kind of a black box. That's the issue. So we classify things people want to ask our bots. We classify so-called intents, applying some sample utterances, which then train the black box and make it more probable that we detect similar sentences as the same class of intent. So if people, for instance, ask, in this case, can I read email I work for Deutsche Bahn, at a train station, then we know that this is exactly the same thing like asking for, is there Wi-Fi at the train station, because they want to have access to the internet, but we haven't trained, I want to read email. It's done through this black box. So that's pretty much what goes on if you use machine learned algorithms, those black box, and inside this black box, indeed, there's nothing else than a big rule-based decision tree. So it's very similar to what we did before, but it's easier to maintain, with the downside of having some, let's say, issues with the probability and biases we introduce in these black boxes. And to give you one sample, what I mean with issues a lot of bots do not cover is something like, if you ask for, I want to read email, and then you get I want to read email intent, that works fine. But what is if you ask, I don't want to read email? What happens in this case? And this depends on the technology. Yes, it's not easy to answer. Some ignore negotiation, others they consider negotiation, you never know, and if you want to prevent a lock-in, you have to somehow deal with that, you have to cover those things, and it's getting even worse if you have applications where people maybe, if for instance at Deutsche Bahn, if we deal with travelers, they say something like, well, I just ordered my cheeseburger at McDonald's, can I read email? Yes, it's not really related to each other, but they write as they talk. And what happens then in an LLU? If you train, I just ordered my cheeseburger, where does that go to? And this is not just then applying proper utterances, cleaning up utterances. It also has to do with the overall editorial process. Because if you have editors which are not used to machine learning and they don't clean up those utterances, then you get ridiculous results in the end. And this is something we also have to teach our editors which do the so-called live training or live learning of a bot like that. Anyway, thanks to all those generative pre-trained transformers, thanks to GPT, nowadays we can involve another way of getting what people want to do. Just explaining the basic concept of, if you missed that over the day, it's also a black box, but the difference is this black box is way larger than the one before, and there's no need for defining intents. Yes, it's a little different because it works in a way that if you write a so-called prompt, which is kind of an instruction, this instruction will then be transformed into something we call a completion. This is the generative part. It generates a completion. So if I write something like, I like to travel by train because, then the completion is, it can be a scenic and relaxing way to journey. Yes, indeed, I work for Deutsche Bahn. But if you start with a famous song, most likely this black box will continue this song. So it's simply a completion engine based on probability, and this probability is based on the size of the data and properties you get from your data. So that's what's going on here. And inside, again, it's kind of a rule-based decision tree which is oriented on the way we think our brain works. It's a neural network which works inside here. So that's what's going on. And you can use that for a couple of things to work more productive. For instance, you can use these large language models and generative AI for classification, things like entity extraction and reasoning. All those things work, and I tried that especially for this talk. Even negotiation is something which this kind of technology easily can detect. But you need to be careful, because especially reasoning is not based on any kind of mathematical logic. It's just reasoning based on the probability of the data in the overall internet, Wikipedia, book libraries. So it does not calculate things, it simply looks up things as they appear in the internet. So that means it sounds plausible, the result, but indeed it has not to be correct. That's the major issue, and I will come back to that in a couple of slides. Anyway, the third part, and this is the major challenge, is the expectation management, because all our customers, they have a totally wrong expectation based on what they read in the news, and you all are aware that news, they like more kind of clickbaiting than a real discourse, what's possible and what's not possible. But this is the way how they come to us and discuss proper solutions. And then I explain this is literally not more than a simple app what we are building. So instead of clicking with a button on a website and then getting back a result which is displayed on the screen, we simply now can, that's what's going on, we simply now can say what we want, and this will be turned, thanks to rules, natural language, understanding, or whatever, into the same thing like the button click. But it feels way more natural with all the up and down sides. So for instance, there are artifacts missing. People, they don't know exactly what to do because there is no button. So we need another way of guidance, and then you get back your answer, and that's simply it is, but it's way more complicated. Yes, in the end, I want to earn some money, and there are so many details, systems, services involved for a proper application based on conversation design, and this is just an excerpt that is really challenging. And to give you just one sample, this is SEMI, the socio-empathic human-machine interaction. Here it's displayed with a robot. Well, nowadays we use that with an avatar for a reason, but this is another story. And there you can, as a traveler, ask your question. And this can reduce the load on the human agents working at, for instance, a train station. And this leads me to the idea of digital twin thinking. And this is what I do in a project. I try to imagine some kind of assistant which avoids repetitive and unpleasant tasks. This is what I think of. And this is called digital twin thinking, and short twinking. This is what I do in projects. And for instance, I did that years ago for Deutsche Telekom, where we had some trouble with our smart home development. And I created a digital twin in Minecraft to demonstrate our smart home. And this really did open the minds of the people. We easily could get vendors on our platform to try out things in the virtual reality instead of the real world. And you could combine that. I built one sample where I could just control my son playing Minecraft in the virtual world with affecting via smart home the real world. So there are so many opportunities. And if you have this virtual representation of something real, you easily can apply conversational AI as an interface to it. It's way easier if you think this way. And this is something we do at Deutsche Bahn again. It's called Train Twin. Where we have digital twins of almost all trains, and it doesn't matter in the end then if there is a virtual dashboard to interact with that, or if you can really talk to the train. It's almost the same. It's just another user interface, and you can virtualize, you can create virtual images of any kind of entities for, as said, trains, products, facility, processes. Even the whole world could be a digital twin, like the Microsoft Flight Simulator, and also people. If you use trackers for sports, for instance, you already have your digital twin. And just imagine you apply to your digital twin some kind of conversational AI, then you get to something like
Hello.
that.
Hello, Bina48.
Okay, that's a little scary.
Bina. I am Bina48.
You synthesize your own voice.
How are you feeling today?
Small talk based on your own interests, that's really strange. But what we do in reality is, for instance, for inspection, we create some kind of digital twin which works alongside with our train mechanics, supporting them. That's one idea. But you should be aware it's not always a person you create. It's for me easier to imagine a process, a product, a facility as a person, but it does not have to be this way. You can virtualize almost everything. And this is way easier to discuss. It's way easier to create a proper solution, because in the end, we have an enterprise we are working for, a company we are working for, we have some values, we have individuals hopefully consuming our values. They have some kind of expectation. That could be customers, that could be peers, whatever, and we try to reduce simply the gulf between those individuals and our values. We try to reduce the gap between human and machine, thinking in the digital twin way. That's what we do. And I think it's quite successful. This, for instance, is a train station, a virtual version of a train station with real data. And thanks to the thinking, you can talk to this train station via conversational AI, but you could also use an app. You can create completely new scenarios. And in the end, finally, I promise that I again say something about ChatGPT and OpenAI and all those things. And this is something we are currently working on, where we combine all those things, where we combine the idea of building hopefully a better bot and this twin thinking with technologies like large language models, generative AI, and we combine that with contact centers. So almost everything I've demonstrated before is somehow involved. And some people call that smart assist, agent assist, or whisper agent. There are a lot of terms for almost the same thing. And the idea is to have a little bit like this instruction example with a train mechanic, to have some kind of virtual assistant which supports a real human. So it's about working alongside. And this virtual assistant can, for instance, summarize what's happened before a little bit like a handover in a contact center. You get the summarization. You can ask this agent assist for some guidance if you're a human agent. You can get recommendations how to answer to improve the conversation. Those are things we can do, and I think you heard a lot about the limitations of those generative AI projects, and we try to work around that. For instance, we use technologies like embeddings to add this generative AI model, this large language models, which have kind of, it's called knowledge cutoff. They have kind of a limited knowledge, and unfortunately they have things like AI hallucinations, so they don't always give you proper answer. The answers, they sound, yes, I have to finish in a minute. Yeah, I only need a minute, okay? She said she will be very strict with me. Sorry, I feel like at home. Yes, anyway, and we lose technologies like, it's called embeddings. That's a new way of doing a semantic search on the fly. We use things like Merkle, Toolformer to introduce dynamic data on the fly where we have way more control. And as Core AI in the morning told, we have a special term of what we are doing here. It's called simply orchestration. Conversational AI is just the orchestration layer, making sure where to use generative AI, where to access dynamic data, and to make sure that you have a controlled output, that you know what's really going on, that you get rid of this hallucinations. And it's really a lot of fun what I'm currently doing, because I'm involved in uncountable projects. You have no idea what's going on in an enterprise with 300,000 employees currently, and I have to talk with the workers' union, with the data scientists, with the data privacy experts, with technicians, with almost everybody. It's a lot of fun, but one important thing is, and this somehow fits to what I said before, even if this is kind of a digital twin of a human assistant, it can't live for its own, yes, because you still need an expert to somehow supervise what's going on. Is the result really correct? Can I really pass the result, for instance, to a customer? And this is quite important to deal with that, and this is why I love this agent assist idea so much, why we think all those things are productivity tools right now, and this it is before you get physical. Thank you.
Again, we have a few minutes for questions, if anyone has anything to ask.
There's a question. Yes. Yeah, I remember you.
That was an absolutely super talk, and I hope that, again, that there's something online that we can download or something. But I want to hear a little bit more about the conversation with the union. Do you have employees that are feeling threatened about this, or how is this going? For those who don't know, in Germany, there's fantastic, the union is sitting on the board of every company. It's really integrated, and it's a fantastic thing. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yes, I think we can continue that after, because I remember you asking a question at the Core AI session, and I was like, I would love to answer that. But for the rest of the audience, the short answer is the workers' union, they are willing to do that because they understand they can't prevent that, they can't forbid that, because otherwise people will do that with their private accounts, and then we will lose total control, and everything goes to companies we usually don't like to share our data with. And this is the reason why we try to find some guards, yes, to build a secure place to use the capabilities of this technology. But if you like, and this is an invitation to everybody here, just contact me. I love to chat about that. Yes, and I will come to you to get a little bit more in detail. Yes. Okay.
I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much.
Thank you.